Hello, everyone. I love working in the Silicon Valley. I love living in the Silicon Valley. But sometimes I get the feeling that the Silicon Valley is a virtual reality invented by brilliant minds, where our wildest dreams are fulfilled by fantastical technology, where one month you can drive past a peach orchard, and the next, the peach orchard is now a modern glass building with perfect landscaping. I also love working at the frontiers of technology. But one day it dawned on me that the work I did had no long term value. No one would care about the software manuals I wrote or the online help I coded. Frankly, it was a shock. It made me realize that I needed to find a purpose that was beyond working in tech. And as they say, when you seek, you shall find. Soon after, I read an article about a group of South Asian women who had created a nonprofit called Maitri. And they were working to empower and support survivors of domestic abuse in our community. It took me one phone call to find my tribe. My first Maitri meeting electrified me. I still remember that drive home more than 27 years ago. My excitement, my connectedness, the feeling of rightness in fixing the injustice and suffering caused by abusive relationships. The emotion that I felt that night fit perfectly into this fierce belief I've had since age 14 that women and men must be equal socially, politically, and economically. That women and men must have the same opportunity to decide their lives. I was a feminist before I knew the word. You know, as immigrants, we are faced with extraordinary challenges. We need to adapt and thrive in a new culture with new norms of behaviors, laws, expectations. We need to build social networks. We need to become financially secure. And we need to do all of this elegantly, lightly, gracefully. But what happens when one is immersed in an abusive relationship? All of these dreams, all of these hopes evaporate. It was only after I joined Maitri I realized the mountain we had chosen to conquer. We walked on paths of deep-rooted patriarchy, liberally sown with misogyny, son preference, abuse by extended family members, community shaming, the pressure on women to keep families together under all circumstances, and all the while being buffeted by immigration challenges. Women called us after being thrown out of their homes, sometimes with their children, sometimes without, and sometimes even without a car seat. Non-custodial parents kidnapped minor children. She had no papers because he had shredded them. She had no access to the money she was earning, or didn't have a job and had no idea where to begin. She was in jail because the abuser called the police after injuring himself. I worked with a young woman thrown out of her home 6 months after moving here. Her wealthy and educated family back home told her she had shamed them in the community and cut off from her just like that. This was the worst of circumstances where the family back home did not support the survivor. But there were better circumstances when the family back home tried to help her. We referred survivors to mainstream organizations, but it became very quickly clear that the mainstream was not able to help immigrant survivors of domestic abuse. Mainstream survivors know the laws, they know how to reestablish lives, they have a social network, they can take financial aid from the government without fear. Many times, lawyers told our clients not to accept financial aid from the government because it could impact their green card or their citizenship application in the future. So, how was she to eat? How was she to support her children? Very early, I once took a young woman with a baby to get food vouchers for nursing mothers. The vouchers permitted peanut butter, eggs, and milk. She was a vegetarian and didn't eat eggs. Peanut butter was completely unfamiliar to her. That left milk on the list. Another young woman, an engineer by training, told me she would rather kill herself here, that the shame and stigma of divorce for her family back home would be simply too much to bear. In fact, her sisters would not be able to get married in their conservative community. How were immigrant survivors to explain these circumstances to mainstream organizations without sounding absurd? The need for cultural connection, the desire to be understood without explanation is paramount and was paramount even at that moment. Very early, we received two key insights that helped us build the organization's foundation. One, immediate help in crisis: food, shelter, legal support. These are key to leaving and staying out of an abusive relationship. Otherwise, survivors will return to their abusers, always with escalated violence. The second, build financial independence. This is critical for choices, including the choice to leave an abusive relationship. And so we embarked on the journey to build an organization that would support survivors in our community in their darkest times. You know, people believe individuals cannot change the world. But the truth is, a small and fiercely committed group of people can ignite a movement. It only took a handful of us to start fundamental change in the South Asian community more than a quarter century ago. We were a creative, bootstrapped startup. We shared the expenses for the helpline, which was an answering machine in one of our studies. We shared the cost for the post office box, the advertisements. We met in our own homes, and we were creative for the rest. I remember many times, my heart in my mouth, using the photocopy machine at work to copy Maitri flyers. Every penny we received, we saved it for the survivors who called us for help. One time, very early, we received $5,000 in donation. It was an unbelievable amount for us. You cannot begin to imagine the kind of ideas that started fizzing in our brains. Then the victim witness organization called us. They were working with a young woman with 3 children. She was Chinese, and her husband had tried to kill all of them twice. Victim witness had a new apartment, new identities, and some funds for expenses far away from here. They also identified a training that would guarantee her a job. Victim witness did not have money for the training. And yes, you guessed, the cost of the training was $5,000. And they told us we were her last hope. Our discussion was short. There is only one answer you can give when you're someone's last hope, even if they're not from your own community. So we gave the entire $5,000 towards the training. And a year later, we're thrilled to realize and find out that she and the children were thriving in their new lives. But you know, the severity of the calls made us realize we could not wait for survivors to find us after all was lost. So began many painful years of attending community events, either being ignored or berated by the attendees. In response to being ignored, we designed a neon yellow banner with a helpline number splashed across in red. Yes, you could surely avoid us, but not that banner. That banner was visible across auditoriums, across fields. It still is. And then there were many times we got to an event only to be told that we were not permitted to participate. Once we went to San Francisco for a South Asian community event, only to be told all nonprofits were banned. This was their attempt to keep the LGBTQQ organization out. So we got creative. First, we went to the women's restroom and we taped the flyers inside the bathroom stalls. Then we hovered outside the men's restroom. As soon as we saw someone approachable, we told him the whole story and said, would he tape the flyers inside the men's restroom? And he said, yes. And so it became standard practice for many, many years after that, whether we were permitted in events or not permitted in events. But we persisted, we endured, we reached out. We spoke anywhere we were invited, even if it was an audience of 5. So my husband took to joking in public that I was on a mission to change the world one person at a time. But we did everything possible to support survivors. We drove them to the courts, to the Social Security office, to the shelter, and even our own homes. Many times, our spouses returned from business trips to find unknown women and children occupying guest rooms, sometimes for months. But slowly and surely, we began to collect our tribe, a tribe fiercely committed to ending domestic abuse in our community here. From helping 5 women a month to over 100, from 5 volunteers to 50, from no staff to 15 passionate, committed people who work their hearts out for the cause. Our first fundraiser that raised $30,000 made us delirious with joy. Now we routinely raise $500,000 in an evening from the South Asian community, and we still get delirious with joy. We are at the table when policy changes are made to support immigrant survivors, when programs are set up to help survivors in this state and country. We are awarded for being pioneers, for creating huge impact, for leadership. And those very same events that shunned us now thank us for helping a friend, a sister, a neighbor. From being a community that believed matters of the home, no matter how destructive or violent, should be kept private, we are now a community that cares fiercely about the injustice and suffering caused by domestic abuse. Truly, we have become our sister and brother's keeper. Yes, it is true. Only the journey is promised to an activist, not the destination. But even in my wildest dreams, I could not have dreamt of the fundamental change we have created in the South Asian community here. Now, I dream of ending gender-based violence in the world.